Welcome everybody to Saddle Up with Shad and Destin. You're probably realizing right now a little Shadless. Rashad is busy. He is driving out to Tuscaloosa to travel up to Alabama's Pro Day for tomorrow. So make sure you guys are following Rashad on Twitter. Make sure you guys have those notifications on. He's going to be live there from Alabama tomorrow. But joining me today is none other than Landon Oliver of the Blue Stable. Landon, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Destin. Thanks for having me on. I'm not quite as good looking as Shad. I'll give him that. That's my guy. But hopefully, like last time I was on the show, I'm able to fill in adequately, have a good time, and talk about some football.
Yeah, and we got a busy one. As you guys probably saw on Twitter, if you guys are watching right now, we had the opportunity, Horseshoe Huddle, to be at Ohio State's Pro Day today. Me and Jake Arthur were there live from the field. I know Landon was able to tune in as well and kind of watch from afar. So we're going to talk Ohio State's Pro Day. First and foremost, though, I want to say thank you guys to everyone who helped us get to 1,000 subscribers. We are now a part of the partnership program through YouTube, which allows you guys a special new feature, which you guys are probably seeing if you are on the YouTube chat right now, which is super chats. So super chats is just a way for you guys to support us and support our work. So any super chats that you guys feel the need to do and throughout your generosity, those will be priority, and we'll put those on the screen and we will talk about those topics as long as you guys keep it at an appropriate level. That'll be what we do for you guys. So again, appreciate you guys getting us to this level and this milestone. But we're gonna start in and we're gonna get talking about Ohio State's Pro Day today. So we're gonna start with what everybody wants to talk about. CJ Stroud. So Landon, from what you were able to see from your side, like what did you think of CJ Stroud's performance today?
Yeah, well, like usually when it comes to like these throwing sessions, obviously scripted throws that are against air. He is actually throwing to his wide receivers now, which is different than the combine. So he has a little bit more familiarity with these guys, obviously. And CJ Stroud is just like built for these throwing sessions because he is just so accurate and in rhythm, and it's fantastic to watch. I know you alluded to like he kind of struggled there a little bit at the beginning, missed a couple throws, but towards the end, especially whenever they got to the last part of it where they were just doing the shot plays and he was just able to unleash. I saw one where he kind of stepped to the left a little bit and kind of just uncorked a gorgeous deep ball. And it's just one of those things like this is his element. This is what he does. Like he's not gonna, he didn't go through the athletic testing today, which is something, and it really allows him to shine in the throwing drills. So I thought overall, once again, really good day for him. It kind of solidified him as being one of the top quarterbacks in this class. And I think you kind of saw that with the contingent of teams picking at the top of the draft there at the pro day today.
Yeah, I mean, so being there live, I mean, Stroud struggled a little early. He sailed a couple out routes, and I don't know what was shown on NFL Plus for people today exactly. Some of the out routes in that first set of throwing session, he kind of sailed a little bit, and then when it came time for those last, he had three deep balls a part of the first set of throws. Um, he underthrew the first two where the receiver had to come back for them. On that third one, on a little hitch deep route, I think he tried to overcorrect a little bit and it just sailed. And it wasn't a catchable ball. Um, After that first kind of like set of hiccups, he kind of got back a little more comfortable. He set in, he was more accurate on the right side, moving to the right side of the field a little bit, showed some ability to run and throw. Now we're throwing in shorts. So take it with a grain of salt where you want to go with it. But I mean, overall, I think Stroud showcased every level of NFL throw you want to see. And the person who he needed to impress the most was Frank Reich. And I'm sure you guys have seen all the hilarious photos online, but Frank Reich was attached to CJ Stroud all day. had his phone recording him like a little proud dad at one moment. Frank was in heaven. I think CJ Stroud is just the perfect Frank Reich styled quarterback. So if Frank Reich is the one making this decision, I think it'll be CJ Stroud in Carolina. I don't know who is making the calls in Carolina. I know Tepper, who is the owner in Carolina, he seems to be a guy who is very opinionated, and I could see him having a decision in a voice in this type of decision. And there's been little crumbs put out there that he's a fan of Bryce Young. And all these other things. Stats Matt here throwing in. Well, Josh McCown said we got to find a court when you move to Charlotte. I did see a little bit of the clip. The part where you can't tell what he says is if he when you live, like you don't hear that part specifically. But you do say we got to find a court when it gets a little jumbled. Charlotte, and I know there's a plan for him to come out to Charlotte for a visit soon, like a part of this. So it could have been that
Yeah.
he was saying as well. But Josh McCown has been a big CJ Stroud guy before he even got the job in Carolina. So there's also that to like look
Yeah,
into.
if you haven't already, like, when it comes to, like, Josh McCown and to get an idea, I know him and Josh Norris do a Scheme show, it's called Scheme on, YouTube. They did one for just about every other quarterback in this class, and you can really tell right away, like, Josh McCown loves him some CJ Stroud. He was very like, he praised him a lot whenever they did their breakdown, so whenever he obviously was announced that hire, it kind of like piqued my ears up where it was like, okay, well, like I know I've watched all of these, and out of all the quarterbacks, Josh McCown really kind of like was enamored with CJ Stroud. Obviously, we know Frank is, loves the guy. I think Tepper is too. And I think it'll kind of play off a little bit, kind of like the Colts do, where Irsay kind of stays out of everything, but he is in on the quarterback decision. They make that with the head coach, the GM, and the owner. And I think it's going to be similar in Carolina. But I think Frank Reich being the head coach and him being the guy that they wanted to come down there, I think he's going to end up having the most say in the process.
Yeah, and we will see. I mean, CJ Stroud was the headliner for this pro day, of course. But I mean, I was impressed by multiple guys out there. I mean, Zach Harrison today. I mean, he had a really strong combine performance.
Mhm.
So him impressing at the pro day was probably expected. But I mean, he is explosive in person.
Freak.
Yeah, really, really aggressive on the bags today. Really just explodes off his stance. Um, and when you see him in person, large, a
I was
guy
gonna
that
say
has
for a guy his size too, like,
oh
and it's not just like the height or weight or anything, it's just how long he is. Like it's very, very cool to watch a guy that big and that long move the way he does.
and to have that kind of explosion and be a guy that has played on the outside and the inside. So just a little checklist for those at home. Huge, explosive, long, has played on the inside and outside. Yeah, so Chris Ballard loves him. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, he checks all the edge boxes for Ballard. Like I said today in my little recap that we did for Horseshoe Huddle, like when you see Harrison live and you just see his traits just moving, like it looks like Chris Ballard just like built this guy in a lab. Just build a bear, Zach Harrison, Chris Ballard did it. And like he's that impressive live. And I mean, Ohio State was very star studded today. Multiple guys that are going to have first round, second round grades. I mean, I think one of the guys who had probably the most to prove in a sense, Jackson Smith. I always ruin his last
In
name.
Jigba.
In Jigba, Jackson Smith in Jigba did not perform at the combine. So was a guy that was going to be seen a little bit more today. Like this was the first of the testing we're going to get of him. In my opinion, he was going to go round one no matter what. I think there's enough tape at him Ohio State, and he's impressive enough that there's teams that I've talked to that have him as receiver one in this class. I don't see a way he didn't go in first round, but he showed out today. I mean, an unofficial 4.48. There are a bunch of people with their own stopwatches out there clocking him today. I saw one as fast as a 4.45. I saw one as slow as a 4.54. And all these watches and everybody who's doing it. I mean, that's all to each their own type of thing, I guess. I mean, I
Right.
don't trust. I mean, in that range where he ran, it was good enough. He only did one. He did one run, didn't do the second one where they did today. And then they really used him a lot today with Stroud's throwing session on deep ball routes. I don't know how much
Yeah.
that was saw on the NFL Plus. Were you able to see that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, it showed, like I said, NFL Plus, like, they didn't get obviously, like, the big first throwing session that you did, but they kinda came in around, like, 1 o'clock Eastern or so. So they were able to catch kind of like the tail end, like the mid to the tail end part of that second. And, from what I was able to see, it like I said, he's kinda built for throwing sessions. Like, there's not many guys that are built the way CJ Stroud is when it comes to, accuracy, anticipation, throwing in rhythm. These scripted throws are just, they're beautiful when it comes to that. And I'm excited to see really now because we saw it at the combine, like his combine throwing session was phenomenal. And so now I'm kind of curious to see the other four guys as well, like how their scripted throwing sessions go this week and then beginning of next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's always cool because at these pro days they get to build the script. Like they get to show off like what their premier throws are. I'm glad that we're past the Zach Wilson pro day end with the beautiful rollout ending throw. I'm glad
Oh,
we
just
moved.
yeah, yeah, you say that, but just wait until Will Levis and Anthony Richardson throw.
Hey, so far
You
we're one person through, and that's not how they ended their throwing session. After that Zach Wilson one, I feel like we saw like 6, 7 pro days in a row where that's where quarterbacks like ended with. So we'll see. Um, Real quick here, we have two. Fred Ballas, our first super chat ever. So congratulations, Fred, on being the first. But as I said earlier, everybody, these super chats, they're going to be first priority if they come in, and we're going to answer yours and be able to discuss this. And this was one I was wanting to get to anyway. So after Stroud's performance today, and after seeing Frank Reich just fall in love with this guy, and I saw it in person. Like it was a rom com in the making, guys. I'm telling you. Like this man was drooling by the end of it. But Fred's question: is there any shot the Colts get Stroud, or is he destined for Carolina? Landon, I'll let you start.
Yeah. Um, after today, probably not. And I've kind of had it penciled in, him going to Carolina now for the last week or two. But on the off chance that Carolina does pass on him, like maybe Tepper's the one that's just like, look, I want Bryce Young, get me Bryce Young. I hired you guys to make it work. So, it'll kind of work with whoever, but this is the guy I want. Or say like they want to take the high upside shot on Anthony Richardson. That's another guy that's been kind of mentioned a little bit, which I personally don't see him going one overall. But
That's a hefty price for
like,
Anthony.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
a hefty price.
So I think on the off shot that they either go Stroud or go Young or Richardson, yes, there definitely is a path because I don't think Houston is going to take CJ Stroud. Obviously, there's connections there. He's got the same agent Deshaun Watson had. There's a lot of question marks surrounding that organization. So I can see him kind of maneuvering his way outside of Houston to where it's like, hey, like, I don't want to go there. Don't pick me. His agent playing a big role in that as well. So then at that point, he falls to 3 to Arizona, and it's either like, if the Colts are that big on him, you could trade up to 3, or you can continue to hope and pray that he falls to you at 4 and that another team doesn't jump up there to get him. So, yeah, I mean, like there is a path forward, but I think it's a very unlikely path at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely path, and Landon touched on it, would be Tepper puts his opinion out there to the point where he's in love with Bryce Young. There's some reports that he already really likes that like high status of Bryce Young and that level of college quarterback. Like that he just has a high regard for him already. So if Tepper interjects himself, decides, hey, like this is the guy that I want as the face of my franchise. I mean, this is his as being a newer owner. I mean, this is his first face of the franchise. Like he's getting
Yeah.
to like start it out. So I would understand if I just bought a team wanting to have a say in that. So if he went that route, overstepped a little bit, would probably be the word some people would use, and then Bryce Young goes one. From what I have heard around league sources, I do not think Stroud would be in play for Houston. I think there's just probably a mutual understanding there with some of the situations with um, Stroud having the same agent as Deshaun Watson. Now, what Houston would do if Bryce Young went one, I have no idea. I am interested in this for the sole purpose of chaos because they would then have to choose, do we still take a quarterback even though we're not in love with any of the other three guys? We wanted Young, we lost out on him. We don't feel like we could take Stroud, who many have as that top two guy. Like, do they do a Will Anderson? Do they just go quarterback and they look for the traits in Anthony Richardson? Do they feel safer with a Will Levis? Like, I don't know what they would do, but Bryce Young going one is what would open the door for a Stroud to Indy being a realistic option. I think for that to happen, though, the Colts have to get to three before the draft. If you let the craziness start, Bryce Young goes one, and you let the rest of the teams behind us also have a shot at three with that knowledge, I think knowing Chris Ballard, that's when you're going to lose the chance to have that option. But Fred, really appreciate it. Really appreciate the first ever super chat there. And make sure you guys are using that feature if you want your question to be put on there. Stats Matt saying, haven't seen Reich look that happy in a while. And as we're going to recap the rest of Ohio State's Pro Day, we talked about a lot of the skill players. There were some big boys out there playing too today, guys. I mean, Paris Johnson is not a guy that is probably in the Colts wheelhouse of options, but I do want to mention that he had a really good day. He really showed how he can move vertically, move laterally, a lot of strength. I loved his little tennis grunts that he was doing off the bags today. Was just screaming when he hit those things. But he put on a show. I mean, we got to see. I thought one of the guys that was kind of traveling with Paris a little bit throughout the day was Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans was there a lot today, and I felt like he was around him a lot. A lot of questions here about DeJuan Jones, the local kid. DeJuan Jones did not participate in events today at the pro day, but he was there. He was active, walking around, supporting his guys. And the lone Colts representative, Mike Lacey, was there, area scout for the area. Um, I will say that once practice ended, the first thing that Lacey did today after practice was went up to DeJuan Jones and his family. Right after practice, was talking to them. The Colts recently had DeJuan Jones in for a top 30 visit as well in the building. So there is some interest that is brewing there with the Colts and DeJuan Jones. That would be a likely day two guy that they would look at if he found his way out of day one. But yeah, DeJuan Jones did not participate today in events. And Luke Weipler, he impressed me today. He has just this perfect center build, man. Just small and stout. Has like the center mass and uses it. He really plants himself well. And he showed out during the drills today. Like I felt like he looked like a guy that if the Colts do decide to go center in that day two range, that I think he looked really impressive today.
Yeah, and this is something too, like, for me, I don't know if there has necessarily been a position group that has kind of grown on me more throughout the draft process than the centers in this class, because going in, it was like, I don't really think this is a very strong interior class as far as centers and guards and all that. And I've really grown to like a lot of these centers now coming out. And, Luke is actually one of them that I've really kind of grown into enjoying watching his film. I think you know, he could be a guy that could rise into that either mid to late second round to third round, beginning of the third round. And like you said, I mean, he's a guy that he moves really well for his size. He's able to take correct angles and really plant and drive people off the ball. And I think like the two biggest centers that have risen for me is you know, him being one of the ones, and then the second one is Joe Tippmann, from Wisconsin. So those are two guys that I was initially hadn't watched a lot on and didn't really, because at the time, the Colts is quarterback. It's all about the quarterback. So every Ohio State thing I watched, it was like CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud. And so now, kind of getting into the other positions here over the last month or two, it's really been cool to see some of the position groups that I thought were weaker in this class come on a little bit stronger than I initially thought.
Question here from Stats Matt. Do you think they'd move Jones to guard to make it work or shift Smith over? So this was actually a topic that myself, Jake Arthur, Zach Kiefer of The Athletic, Nate Atkins of the Indy Star, some of the Indy brass that was there today covering the pro day. We were discussing this. If the Colts did go that route, like what would they do? So like my conclusion and like what I've said about it, I think once the Colts get to the training camp and who's here via the draft and free agency, it's going to be priority number one with likely a rookie quarterback that you have the best five out there. And
Mhm.
whatever you have to do to make that five out there, you do. My skepticism about moving Jones to guard, I'm really interested to see like what it would look like if he was in a situation where he had to pull at the guard spot. I just don't know how he would excel there. And I mean, the reason that a lot of people look at him and say guard is he's huge, right? Like he's just a massive individual. And usually what comes with that is very slow off the jump. But I mean, he only allowed one sack over the last 2 seasons at Ohio State. Like he is a
Yeah,
guy like he excelled in pass coverage. So like I don't see a necessary reason to move him to guard.
yeah,
So
and I
I
mean, like for me too, like to kind of touch on that, part of what makes him special is his unique size and agility at his size. I mean, he's just a massive, massive individual. I know we got to see him up close at the pro day, or not the pro day, but at the Senior Bowl as well. And whenever you have a guy that size playing on the interior, it can sometimes get you into trouble just because he doesn't have that natural leverage that most guards and interior offensive linemen need to get underneath, the defensive tackles and, drive and stuff like that. So it can make it a little bit more difficult if you kicked him inside, where I think Braden Smith would have a lot easier transition. Naturally, he was drafted to be a guard. So I think he has a lot more natural fit at that position. And I think we saw last year the big issue with playing guys not at their natural position. And it really got the Colts into some trouble there. So I think, you would move Smith over to guard. Like this was just what I would do. I would just, look, the money is what it is. Like at some point, you just got to get the best five on the field, like you said. And I think Smith would have a much more natural transition to guard than Dawan Jones would.
Yeah, so this comment from Unboxing Mania, they're paying Smith tackle money. Would be surprised if they move him. I mean, the tackle money is what it is. I mean, we're Quentin Nelson, one of the highest paid guards in the league, no longer the highest paid. We don't have to say that anymore after this offseason. But so you move Braden Smith over. I mean, the argument at the end would just be like the averaged out on the line. I mean, you'd have two rookie tackle contracts. So yeah, you're overpaying guards, but you're then in the place where you're paying the almost the least amount probably in the NFL at your tackle spots. And both tackles are gonna. If it was a Dewan Jones, if we're looking to the future, that's what it was. I mean, that's two non-first round pick tackle money that's being given out. So like that's the other thing that you'd have to like weigh in there. And again, to me, I don't care if there's going to be more memes about paying guards because Smith gets moved to right guard and that keeps it there. I think Smith would be more natural in the situation to have to do these pull type blocks. And if you watch that Philadelphia blocking scheme, they like to pull guards quite a bit. So if you move Jones into that range, that's where I think he would struggle more than his size is going to struggle him as a pass blocker.
Yeah, and then, like, on top of that as well, something that a lot of people don't even think about is if you are drafting Jones to be your day one, or not day one, but like your future, your right tackle of the future, playing him at a different position and having him learn how to play guard, and then saying, okay, well, here in a couple years or maybe in a year or so, we're putting you back out here. It would be better to just throw him in right tackle where you want him to grow and develop, and just let him take his lumps at that spot instead of just constantly switching back and forth his positions.
Yeah, I agree. Drake Wally here, Horseshoe Huddle content creator himself. How confident are the Colts in Will Fries? We we talking they need a vet to push him, or should he be a depth piece in your opinions? I like Will Fries a lot. I wanted him to get some more play early on last year, personally, and I think the offensive line saw improvement when him and Ryman were in the line were in the starting lineup long enough to grow a little bit. I think Will Fries has the ability to continue to progress. I think with a rookie quarterback coming in, you need less question marks to the point where I love Bernard Ryman. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I'm a big Ryman fan. Liked him a lot in the draft last year. Loved his improvement over the year last year. I think you still need to sign somebody with starting experience at the left tackle spot to push him in camp even as well. So I think you definitely have to bring a vet in with the Will Fry situation, or it just depends on how the draft falls as well, because there's multiple guards in this draft that are really talented. Steve Avila out of TCU is a guy that comes to mind, where I think he's a day one starter that you could plug in and play. And then that makes Will Fries your sixth offensive lineman, and you can kind of rotate him in and out, and that works as well. I mean, I think Will Fries is a solid player at this next level. I just think there's progression that needs to be made before he's just a starter in the NFL. Myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm a little bit lower on Will Fries than I know most Colts fans are. I don't necessarily think he has that upside to be a starting caliber right guard, but he's a guy that to me would fit really well into that, sixth or seventh offensive lineman where if somebody goes down, you can play him in a pinch and not really have to worry about too much of a drop off. But obviously, well, I guess it depends on the drop off, depending on who your starter is. Like, if he's starting for Quentin Nelson or something like that, I think you would see a pretty decent drop off there. But yeah, I just think for me, he ends up being a solid depth piece along your offensive line. And I don't necessarily see him in a starting role. So I mean, I would just kind of rather them either draft the start like a guy that could end up being a high caliber starter like an Avila, and I believe we both had him in our mock draft. I believe so.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about the situation.
Yeah. So, anything else you can think of about the Ohio State Pro Day today that we haven't touched on that you want to discuss before we kind of move on to some of the other pro days coming up this week?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a guy participating today that could be a hot name next year, depending on how the Colts season goes, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm curious to see, being there live, of course, obviously we saw the video, you got to connect with Marvin Harrison Sr. and got to chat with him for a little bit. But I am curious to see what it was like to watch Marvin Harrison Jr. work in person.
Yes, I mean Marvin Harrison today and Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, they didn't use him as much as I thought he would. I'm gonna be honest. Like when they put the announcement out that Marvin Harrison Jr. was gonna run routes today for Stroud. Like they used him on one of the deep routes today. And it was one of the underthrown balls. He comes back and makes the play, obviously. And they used him on a couple of the underneath throws, but they really just didn't use him as much as I thought they would during his throwing sessions. And I mean, it was all scripted out, so it was just like as they had it planned. I'm assuming. But yeah, I was shocked they didn't use him as much as I thought. I'll be honest. In person, like when you see everyone posting him on Twitter and stuff, like everyone acts like he's like this muscle hamster, like jacked guy. In person today, he didn't look like super buff. I mean, like he looked fit still, obviously. Like he's still like Marvin Harrison Jr., but like he did not look like this ginormous human that I see in pictures on Twitter.
Yeah, I wonder if he got that build from his dad a little bit. His dad was always a little bit slighter as well. But yeah, I do remember seeing an out route throw they made, Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. And to me, like that was one of the most deadly combinations in college football last year was Stroud to Marvin Harrison Jr. on the out route. And just his ability to cut. I mean, we're gonna have plenty of time to get into Marvin Harrison Jr. in the next 12 months. But yeah, I was just curious on how he kind of looked and how he kind of measured up in person.
I mean, he's still incredible. He still runs really well for his size. Like he does things that just don't make sense still. And like he's everyone, all the talk around it today was, man, like why can't this guy be drafted this year? Like like that kept being discussed there today, but sadly everybody can't. That's just the
I'm
moral of
not
the
sad about
story.
it at all because if he was coming out this year, I don't think
We
the
have no
Colts would have
chance.
a chance.
Yeah, we'd have no chance if that
Yeah.
was the case this year. But also a special surprise from today. A few of us did get to talk with the Marvin Harrison Sr. Was there at the pro day today. After we were walking practice, we were just walking around, and he was just sitting there by himself. So a few of us went up and got to discuss with him. That entire interview is on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel, so make sure you guys check that out to hear Marvin's thoughts on C.J. Stroud, the quarterback, his son Marvin Harrison Jr., and even some thoughts on Reggie Wayne, who is now a coach, and how he feels about that, and why Reggie is not in the Hall of Fame yet. Just some of those things that we discussed with Marvin. Make sure you guys check that out. And as we're going to move away here from Ohio State's Pro Day. Remember, everybody, the Horseshoe Huddle Pro Day Tour is going on right now. You got to see myself and Jake today at Ohio State. We have the Rashad McGinnis is going to be at Alabama tomorrow. So make sure you guys are checking out his stuff. And then throughout the week, you will see more coverage. This Friday, I will be at Kentucky University, joined by Landon Oliver himself, who is on the chat right now. He will be there with us, and we'll be able to kind of see another quarterback that maybe is not as well liked amongst the Colts fans in Will
Put it
Levis,
putting it politely.
but he's going to be there. And it'll be interesting to see him as well. So we're going to kind of move on there. So I guess before we even get into Kentucky's Pro Day, Alabama's tomorrow. I feel like this entire process is just I've not seen an option that Bryce Young was going to be a quarterback for the Colts without a trade up by them. So it's been harder for me to like get excited about that option. But what are you interested in seeing? Because he didn't test at the combine either. This is the first we'll see of Bryce Young.
Yeah, well, I don't think he tested this one either. I don't think he's going to go through like the athletic testing. I don't think he's going to go through measurements and all that stuff. Like that's strictly what the combine was just for measurements. So I imagine now he's probably lost a good 10, 15 pounds, maybe back to his natural playing weight. And I do think that we're going to see another quarterback that will shine in the throwing drills. I mean, he's just as good, as CJ Stroud is when it comes to accuracy, anticipation, throwing in rhythm. Something I am curious about is seeing kind of where they draw the line for like arm strength and kind of these drive throws because that's something I've always wanted to see a little bit more from him. Is the ability to drive the ball with velocity further down the field. So I'll be watching for that. But yeah, he's another guy that's just these throwing drills are just made for. And also too, like it's a good class for Alabama as well. There's some good players coming out. The DB room is going to be going to be a fun room always for Alabama. DB room's always a good one. They don't have that wide receiver this year. The Julio Jones, Devontae Smith level wide receiver, but there are some good options as well. And then some of the offensive linemen. I'll be kind of curious to watch, but yeah, this isn't like a normal Alabama pro day where you're going down there and you're watching, 6, 7 first round picks. So I'm curious to see who can kind of solidify themselves tomorrow.
So another big name tomorrow, Will Anderson, potentially the first non-quarterback drafted in this year's class. So Landon, I'm gonna say this, and people in the chat, feel free to give me your opinion on this as well. If Colts Nation DEFCON 5 happens, and all the first three picks in whatever order are Stroud, Young, Richardson. So someone trades up ahead of the Colts, drafts Richardson. Do you think the Colts would draft Will Levis? Do you think that they don't see a big enough gap to where they would still take the quarterback? Or do you think they would look at it and say, well, we missed on those three guys. We're going to take the best player available, and they draft a Will Anderson?
No, I mean, I do think they would take Will Levis. I do. And really, this even goes back to throughout the season. There were multiple games. I think at least 5 that I know of that the Colts had scouts at Kentucky games. So, to me, I think it clearly, there's something there that they do like in him, or else they wouldn't go back as many times as they did. Um, it would probably melt down the internet if that was to happen. But I do think, you know, all this unnecessary hate that Will Levis gets. I mean, like I just don't understand it. I don't know if it's the mayo in the coffee. I don't know if it's, eating the banana peel. I don't get it. Um,
Being cringy in 2023 is a criminal offense,
yeah.
Landon. I
Well,
don't know if you knew
also
that.
too, like I constantly see the comparisons thrown out to another former Colts quarterback that is very
Scott Tolzien?
well, not quite that far back, but a more recent one in the last few years. So I don't know if it's, big arm, mobile. I that's where the comparisons end for me. Like they both have big arms and they're mobile, and then like that's pretty much it. But
Bible tattoo?
oh yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe
Hey, that's a big similarity that they have. I mean,
that is true.
I
Jesus.
I have had Will Levis as my quarterback for just about the entire cycle. Everyone, it was weird because like we had a little twist in Colts fan nation because I feel like for a while fans were really upset and they thought I hated Will Levis because I had him at quarterback 4, and like it was just like this indictment on him. And then Anthony Richardson caught fire as a prospect, and now our fan base just hates Will Levis. Like this Colts
Yeah.
fan base cannot stand this man. Um, and I just don't understand. I mean, I think all 4 are first round quarterback prospects, no matter the year. Like it's not a situation to where there's just enough teams that need quarterbacks this year. I think all 4 grade out as first round quarterbacks. I mean, I think Will Levis would have been the first quarterback off the board last year. I
Yeah.
understand it was not a
That's what I was gonna
great
say.
quarterback
Is
year,
Will Levis is probably a top 10 pick last year.
and
And
and if he didn't put mayo in his coffee, people would probably still find he still has some cringy moments. Like I get it, like he has some little sound bites that are not attractive to the common fan, but I mean, big arm, more than mobile enough at the next level, makes plays with his legs outside the pocket. Um, I think Kentucky and Florida. So watching Richardson, watching Levis, like the similarity is both their teams suck this past year. Like, oh my gosh. I mean,
you're not
Rich,
sugarcoating that.
Richardson is going to have at least a other player that gets drafted in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Um, but both teams just overall, especially on the offensive side
Yeah.
of the ball, was
I was gonna say Richardson
horrendous.
actually had a decent offensive line, where Kentucky did not at all. Like they were abysmal.
And they
Um,
also like Kentucky refused to run anything close to a pro style offense this past year.
yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, there's pro concepts. It was kind of like a great value version of like what Sean McVay likes to do, but they were very like ball control, run the football, smash mouth. Like we'll let like they
screen,
didn't,
screen,
yeah,
screen.
they love wide receiver screens, that's for sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, like this just some of the offensive play design, like I mean, you literally have it's like having a Ferrari and a trailer park. Like you've got this quarterback who has all the talent in the world, and like for whatever reason, people think he's not, but like he is extremely talented, and they just refused to play into what he does well. The good thing is though, with Will Levis, is he was tasked with a lot of pro style, like making checks at the line of scrimmage, getting the offensive line into protection calls, even though they weren't, a very talented offensive line. So even if they were in the right protection call, it really didn't matter because they couldn't block anybody anyway. But, making the long calls, most of these college quarterbacks you see, on Saturdays, whenever, the defense gives them a certain look, they'll all look, they'll look to the sidelines and the coaches will kind of make the changes for them. and then they'll kind of relay that. With Will Levis, it was none of that. I mean, it was he got up to the line of scrimmage. He was the one that was diagnosing all that stuff. He was the one making these, long play calls, and that's a transition as well. People don't think of is, the size of the playbooks in the NFL are massive, and a lot of these plays that are calling, I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5 sentences long, and that's going to be an adjustment period for a lot of guys, and that's not going to be an adjustment period for Will Levis because he's been doing it for 2 seasons now. So I'll be curious to see, the pro day. I think he's another guy that like he's gonna just be absolutely dynamite at his pro day just because his arm.
I think he's gonna actually test more than the other guys too, though.
He might,
Because
hopefully.
I think he so I think with Stroud and Young, I mean, so today we had the opportunity to like speak with with Stroud after the pro day, and when someone asked him straight up like why he decided not to run the 40, like he straight up said, I didn't feel like I had to. I feel like the tape shows that I'm more than mobile enough, and no team asked me to do it, so there was just no need. So he just threw. I think Bryce Young tomorrow. There's a chance that he tests a little bit. He didn't get to do the combine, so maybe he just wants to, but he doesn't have to. Like Bryce Young knows he's going in the top two. He
Right.
just does. And Stroud is a guy that 4 is his floor, probably 3 if we're being honest. The only reason he doesn't go that is if he doesn't go 1. Like he's gonna go 1 or 3 or 4. Like that's who Stroud is. I think the Levis Richardson. I mean, Richardson's getting a lot of hype right now, and I think the Colts should absolutely take him. Like I'm a Richardson guy. So, but I think those 2 guys, their floor in this draft is much lower than what those
Yeah.
Bryce Young, CJ Stroud is. So because of that, I think we'll see them test. I mean, Anthony Richardson, what's he going to do at his pro day that he didn't just do at the combine?
Right.
But I mean, why not test and just show it again? So I'm sure he will. But I think Levis is going to as well because he has something to prove, and if he wants to put himself in that level of quarterbacks with those top 2 guys, like he might have to.
Yeah, and also too, like, I know he was injured this year, obviously with the foot injury. So him not testing, at the combine, it could have just been another chance, like, hey, we'll give it another month or so to heal up, and then we'll test, at the pro day. So I'll be curious to see, if he does, and I think he will test really well. He's a big athletic guy. I don't think he's gonna obviously be close to Richardson as far as what an athlete is, but I think he's probably the second most athletic quarterback outside of Anthony Richardson in this class. Like I do think there is more there as far as size and athleticism than you get obviously with CJ Stroud or Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and we're here talking about the Kentucky Pro Day. If you're just now joining us, me and Landon will be live from Lexington that day. Um, at the University of Kentucky for the pro day. I mean, obviously, seeing Levis throw is an element of it. So, but what do you think Levis could do on Friday that could change the narrative that is being said about him? Whether it's the media, whether it's Twitter, like what do you think Levis could do Friday that could change, let's say, the haters' minds?
Oh, nothing. I don't like. I don't. Yeah, there's nothing that's gonna happen at pro days or anything like that or that's gonna change because really, like when it comes to like hating Will Levis or something like that, it's a lot more of who he is personally than it is what's actually on the field. And I'll say that obviously there's turnover issues and stuff like that, which we could get into a huge show about what it looks like whenever a quarterback has to consistently carry a bad roster and maybe you're having to force more throws, you're having to force more bad decisions, you have to make more plays because you don't have anybody that can win on the outside or your offensive line or anything like that. But when it comes to like Will Levis, and like this is kind of where I get into why I don't understand the Zach Wilson and the Carson Wentz comparisons is like this is a guy that he's extremely passionate about football. He loves to be coached hard. He's a great leader for a team in a locker room. Like once he is in that element of leading a team, I really think and like he has the talent to match then I think he shines. And there's just like there's core differences in who he is as a person, and like that's what's great about this entire class is like all of these guys, like for as talented as they are, like they're all great leaders, they're great workers, they're great individuals as humans. Like it's very rare to have this many guys that check the mental boxes as well as the physical boxes. So to me, like I'm a lot higher on this quarterback class than most because a lot of people say it's like, oh well, it's a two-person race, and then you got guys that can bust. I mean, like if you're willing to take the coaching, if you're willing to do the work, if you're smart. This is a guy, he graduated, like this wasn't some like throwaway degree. He graduated with a financial like business degree in 3 years. Like he's smart. He's a smart kid. And Anthony Richardson, extremely smart kid. So like, they have the intelligence, they have the work ethic, they have the leadership. I mean, I just don't. Yeah, exactly. Like it's not anything that you can measure in stats or even like in watching the games. Like you just I don't I mean, I don't really know.
I get it.
I don't know.
I get it. We could do this all
Yeah,
day.
I
Like,
mean,
I
we could
mean,
do
and we're
this all day.
and we both have Will Levis as quarterback 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, like it's a different world. But
I like
I
all
mean,
these guys. And I know like it's the same thing with you. Is like, yeah, he's quarterback 4, but there's a path forward for all 4 of these guys to have success at the NFL level.
yeah, I mean, and to be a franchise quarterback, like if you have a actual plausible path to that, like that's usually what it's going to cost for me to give you a first round quarterback grade. And I think all 4 of these guys have that. And I agree from the question earlier, like about Will Anderson. Would they take Will Levis or Will Anderson? I think they would end up taking Levis still. I do. I do think that they probably would be more enamored with an Anthony Richardson, and I think that's probably where they would prefer to go. But if the cards don't fall in that way, I think they would still take Will Levis. And I think Will Levis would have a great coaching staff around him with that have coached guys like Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Peyton Manning way back when. Lots of quarterback success with the guys that are going to be in Kyler Murray.
And it's another like, Peyton Manning loves Will Levis. He's a big Will Levis guy.
Hey, I'm in here hoping. I mean, maybe it's because I got to talk with Marvin Harrison today that I'm just like in my like I'm just feeling it. But I would love if Peyton wanted to just show up to the University of Kentucky and and support his guy Will Levis. I mean, would love to see it. But overall, I mean, we've talked a lot about Will Levis, who we're going to get to see Friday at Kentucky's Pro Day. Anybody else that you're interested to see on Friday, and maybe if they have a possibility with the Colts?
Yeah, well, there's another guy that I've really enjoyed watching, and I got to chat with him at the Senior Bowl. I know he's a running back, so I don't know, if the Colts are in that market, but Chris Rodriguez Jr., he's a guy that I'm very interested to see. Like his game tape is just, I mean, I've never seen, I believe like he had like almost 900 something carries, and he was brought down for a loss like 3 times, like, in his entire college career. It's, like, absurd how many plays that guy makes in the running game, and I think he could be a really strong option as well. Obviously, there's some DBs that are gonna be there as well. There is, a guy that's really kind of grown as far as, let me pull this up here because I gotta remember who I was working out, at the pro day. And so I'm pulling up our media information here.
Yeah, so
But,
currently what I some of the names just
yeah,
like while you're
Carrington
looking.
Valentine is a guy that
Yes.
I'm really interested to see. Another l long cornerback in this class, this cornerback class is just so large, and they're all athletic. So he's another guy that fits really well, and I think could be had, on day 3 for the Colts. And he's a guy that's kind of garnered a lot of steam here recently. I've seen more people talking about Carrington Valentine. So, I'm curious to see how he performs at his pro day.
Yeah, I mean, I like Valentine a lot. I think he's a guy who ran a sub 4.5. I can't remember exactly what he ran at the combine. It was either a 4.48 or 4.49. But like I think he's a guy who had like shows that a little bit, that speed that you need to be able to play on the inside or outside. And I said it earlier, Chris Ballard loves versatility. He loves it. If you're able to do both, sign him up. I also think, I mean, this is the guy who is probably being projected as undrafted right now in linebacker Jordan Wright. I just have to like say like, he's 6'5". I love that part of it. Like to have someone of that size, like at the linebacker spot's fun to look at. So I'll be interested to kind of see like what type of drills they put him in. Because at 6'5", over that 230 mark, like there's probably a lot of teams that could see him at multiple different positions at the next level if he's an undrafted free agent guy. And I guess the other thing I'm really curious about is to see what the Colts representation is.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
today, I mean, today at Ohio State, they only sent an area scout. Like they sent Mike Lacey, and he handled it all on his lonesome. And the Colts are notorious for kind of letting their scouts do a lot of this work for them, and they'll show up to like one or two as a staff. So I'm interested to see like what the Kentucky representation looks like. If it's just another, if it'll be another one where they just send an area scout.
Yeah,
Eh,
I can see that. Chris Ballard doesn't really go to pro days, so he's one of the GMs that he does. He said he kind of lets back and lets his scouts do their job. I don't anticipate seeing Shane Steichen there as well, but I mean, I am curious to see if they do send somebody else out there. Is it somebody like Ed Dodds or somebody along that lines?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Morocco Brown is another one to watch for. He was at the Senior Bowl, so it'd be interesting to see if they sent him out as well. But honestly, I mean, we are really, really excited, guys, to be out there in Lexington Friday. Landon, I really appreciate you coming on, man, filling in for Rashad as he was making that drive to Alabama. Um, I do want to remind everybody that Rashad is going to be at Alabama tomorrow. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter. Make sure you guys are subscribed to his posts. He's going to be giving us all the Alabama Pro Day content that you can see. Be on the lookout for anything that he's going to be getting up on our YouTube from that tomorrow. And who knows, maybe Rashad is going to get a one-on-one with the Bryce Young. Maybe we don't know. We don't know. Just be on the lookout for it, everybody. But Landon, again, appreciate you coming on and filling in for me. Where can everybody find your content, Landon?
Obviously, you can follow me over at the Blue Stable. We're kicking off our draft stuff here in the next few days. Once April starts, it's really going to be kind of well, I don't want to say that because I don't know the monetization and all that, but we're really gonna be picking it up here in April. I gotta watch my language sometimes. And then you can follow me on Twitter, of course, at Landon3MR. It's right there in my description. So follow me on Twitter. Check us out on the Blue Stable. We're gonna have a lot of good draft coverage, and then we'll be there Friday. I'm excited. Get to hang out with you once again. Look, second time in what, 2 months now? 2 months?
Yeah, I know. Went from never seeing each other in person to twice already in 2023. We're soaking it in, man. But
Yeah, love it.
super excited to be out there Friday. Make sure you guys are following us at Colts on FN for Horseshoe Huddle. Make sure you guys are ready for all of these pro days that we're about to hit and the content coming your way. And while you're here watching the video, make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button for all our content, and go over and check out all the videos that got posted today from Ohio State's Pro Day in preparation for the other Pro Day information that's going to be going on the rest of the week. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for all the super chats today. It was really fun to kind of have that for the first time ever. We'll be back at it next Wednesday for the Saddle Up Show, and it'll be Rashad and Destin back together. No one worry.